Hello there and welcome to Mike Checks Out Valkyria Chronicles 4, possibly the game I've been looking forward to most this year. I loved the original Valkyria Chronicles that came out initially on the PS3 and has had a PS4 remaster which you can pick up dirt cheap on PSN at the moment, so I grabbed that if you're interested. This Valkyria Chronicles is probably in my top 10 favourite games of all time, if not in my top 5, and the strategy role-playing genre of which this falls into is my favourite genre. Games like Vandal Hearts and XCOM and Ark the Lad and Final Fantasy Tactics and games like that are my very favourite type of game to be playing. So this one has got a slight difference in as much as you have a map like this where you select your units. Those stars at the top are the number of moves I've got per round, and I select a unit. I move it then in real time through the environment. So I've selected my tank. I'm now moving my tank in real time during the environment, and I will get fired upon by enemies that are in range and have the capacity to counterattack. So that pillbox is shooting me at the moment, but because I'm a tank, bullets just bounce off and no damage is done. So tanks are great for moving through the battlefield, ignoring enemy fire in terms of anyone that's carrying any type of gun, and providing cover or movable cover for your team, because someone can hide behind the tank and it will shield them from machine gun fire. They are vulnerable to attack from lancers. There's a lancer directly in front of me there, which is shown by the little the icon with the pointy head and the dot in it. And those lancers are the infantry that can damage armoured units, but generally aren't able to do anything with infantry. Here's my sniper. My sniper is going to take out that emplacement, and we'll talk about these emplacements because they're one of the strategic changes from the original game. Now she's going to run over and get into the APC. Now, if you played the second Valkyria Chronicles game on PSP, you'll be familiar with APC. They had an armoured personnel carrier in that. This is new to the console version, and it means you've got a light armoured vehicle that can carry a number of units. You can upgrade it. Currently, I can carry a maximum of 3 units. In my APC, you start with only 2, and this is unlocked very early in the game, so there are no spoilers here at all as far as that's concerned. And that means that you've got an armoured vehicle that can go straight through machine gun fire without any damage at all. I'm going to use him now to take out that lancer so it doesn't try to blow up my tank. There we go, done. But can carry to different parts of the field other characters. So in there at the moment I've got a lancer, I've got an engineer, and I've got my sniper, and now I can disembark those units, as you'll see me do in a little while, and they're much further into the field than they could have travelled themselves and have been protected by various types of gunfire. So your armour can be used tactically, and then obviously your infantry units can be used tactically as well. And there are the original 5 classes from Valkyria Chronicles. This is the Scout. Very, very, very long range. They can run for ages. That little orange bar at the bottom you see depleting there is their movement distance. And they can also spot enemies from a distance, but also enemies that might be hiding in long grass or might be shielded in some way. They're very squishy. Doesn't take very many shots to get them down. There you can see me using the tank as some portable cover. So if anybody shoots at me, they can't get to me because the tank's between me and them. You've got shock troopers. Shock troopers are got a lower range than the Scout, but do have machine guns. So they can do a huge amount of damage. And there's an example of how we're going to use one of the classes in a second. You've then got Lancers, again restricted range. They are very, very well protected against explosive damage, and they carry these Lancers with grenades on the top which are designed to take out tanks. So they are your tank buster. Then you have Engineers. Engineers are like Scouts, but they have a slightly lower range, but are designed really to repair tanks, to repair sandbags for cover. As you'll see in a little while, they can also repair parts of the environment as well. And then finally, and you saw her in action right at the beginning, you have Snipers. Your typical sniper can't move very far, very, very squishy, but able to take people out from very, very long range. So those are the 5 returning classes from the original game. What you've got now is one additional class that you get, which is the Grenadier. And the Grenadier is a long-range mortar. So you've got a low mobility in that particular class, but you've got a very long range weapon which can do devastating damage to infantry. And also can provide covering fire as well during enemies' turns. So during the enemy's turn, a grenadier, if an enemy is in range, will continually bombard them, which might cause them damage or get them to stop. So all of these 6 classes, in connection with your armour, are great ways to tactically take over a battlefield. So for instance, I've deployed my engineer from the APC there. The engineer has repaired the ladder and has now climbed up this ladder, which gives us access to a higher level of the game, which means I can get troops up onto this higher level to take out all of the things like the gun emplacements and the armour emplacements, which will damage my infantry and my armour on the ground. And this is one of the big differences with Valkyria Chronicles. Now, you see, just a minute, she's going to repair the sandbags. She's an engineer and can repair stuff. There you go. So she can now take cover behind the sandbags, which means she can't get headshot damage. So we're going to stop that particular action. But you've got these gun emplacements. Now, in the original Valkyria Chronicles, you had pillboxes, which are entrenched machine gun placements, but they only appeared in a single level of the game. Now, they appear far more often. Not just these pillboxes, which are virtually impossible to kill from the front, but if you get behind, you can blow them up like this. So again, tactical placement means you can take them out. These pillboxes, they also have machine gun emplacements, Gatling emplacements, which are devastating to your infantry, but also you have anti-tank emplacements as well, which will rain hellfire down upon your armour. And what you're finding now with Valkyria Chronicles is that the environment is much more important. So in this particular example, I've got a group of people moving very slowly around ground level. By getting the engineer to repair the ladder, I can now bring some of my infantry up onto a higher level so they can start taking out gun emplacements and Gatling turrets and things like that, so the people on the ground level are not affected by it. And this is what you're getting now with the game. One of the advances in this game over the original is that the topography, the level design itself, encourages you to kind of divide and conquer, if you like, to split up your troops to do different things. There is an early, very, very difficult level, but essentially it is a level whereby you can have 3 groups. So I've got one group who's going at ground level to rescue someone. I've got another group that's a higher level, clearing a path for the people who've got to rescue someone. But I also had another group that was drawing fire from tanks to ensure that I was protecting both of those other flanks, so as they were trying to get to rescue an injured team member of mine. So you've now got a much more strategic element, not just in the way that you use your infantry and your characters, but also in how you use the environment. And you're having to think about that and juggle priorities in terms of, do I advance these people forward first, or do I need to clear a path for them to make it safer? And that kind of consideration is very, very important. This is a new Grenadier class. I don't get her to blow up anything in this go because she's not in range. But as you can see here, she's got a much, much, much longer range. And it's explosive damage, which it's good for infantry, but you can get different types of mortar that are going to impact armour. So, I mean, this is still my first go. This particular level, despite the fact I've done it before, you can go back and replay levels, still took something in the region of 30-35 minutes to finish. I have had 40, 45, 50 minutes to finish a particular level. This is not quick stuff. You cannot advance fast. If you do, you will just die. Here we go. Brought someone around the back. Take out the pillbox. Boom. These are potentials. In certain, you can't trigger these directly, but in certain environments or under certain conditions, your players will get a buff or something like that. Now, the example we got here is now we've skipped forward in this round a little bit, but I've got a machine gun emplacement that I'm going to take down. So I'm going to use the scout here to take that down. So again, I've moved them up a level and I'm clearing a path for the people on the lower level. So there is the scout taking that machine gun emplacement out, because she's got quite long range and reasonable accuracy with her weapon. And then I've got an armour placement. So this is a piece of emplacement which can take down armour. So what we've got now is this shock trooper is coming up. He's had a potential, raised his accuracy. We're going to come up, just going to crouch down behind the sandbags. I'm not going to bother this time. And he's got a secondary weapon. You do get secondary weapons for some classes once they've leveled up enough. His flamethrower is just taking down that emplacement. So now the Gatling turret or the pillbox has gone from the other side of the valley. I've taken down the armour emplacement from this side of the valley, which means that my infantry on the ground floor can move up. Also, I've been able to get above these tanks. And tanks are not very vulnerable from the front. They will take a lot of killing from the front, but all tanks have a weakness at the rear. This radiator that you see, the blue radiator at the back of each of the tanks, you can generally, if you're accurate enough, take them down in one hit. So my ability to manoeuvre someone above them to get behind them means that I've got a tactical advantage. So these are the kind of decisions you're making when you're playing the game, when you're actually involved in combat. And if you get stuff wrong, you will be punished for it. In this particular one, although I haven't actually shown you it, I did actually make a mistake and got two of my characters downed. I was able to rescue them, but one of them, because I advanced too quickly and they got shot down. The second one, because I didn't position them properly when they finished their turn, didn't realise they were still in range of a gun, and they got taken down. So you have to be very, very careful in terms of how you position the units. Otherwise you'll be punished. And if you don't get to them within 3 goes, they're dead. You know, the grunts, the part of the team which are not part of the story, if you don't look after them, they will die, and that's it, them gone. They can't come back again. There is a permadeath mechanic within, the basic units within the game. So this kind of tactical positioning is great. I'm very short, I'm a couple of minutes away from finishing this particular level. Because I've used my units effectively. That engineer repaired the ladder, getting certain people above the battleground to clear a way for the people who are on the ground. I've now been able to very effectively and very efficiently move my pieces through the board to the point where I'm about to capture the base and win. What I'm going to use here very badly, sadly, is one of the Hafen, which is your tank's smoke grenades. So he has smoke rounds, anti-tank rounds, a machine gun and mortars on your tank. This means things within the cloud can't target you, as you can see from the map. I didn't quite push it far enough away, but I'm going to take my APC, which has had a number of people on it, which can't be taken down with machine gun fire anyway. I'm going to go to this base at the end. I'm going to use the APC to annihilate this sniper back here. Done. And now I can disembark someone from the APC who can capture that base, and we've won the round. One thing that is a bit fiddly, the tanks, the APCs, are a bit fiddly to manoeuvre. It's a bit of a pain, to be perfectly honest with you, but you do get used to it. But sometimes you'll find yourself spinning all over the place, not doing what you want to do, and I wish they'd fixed that from the original game. There we go. I have now captured that base, and I should get a nice A ranking for this one, and you're ranked on your performance. So that is kind of like combat. So what we do in terms of combat in Valkyria Chronicles, it is just beautiful, it's dynamic. The voice acting in the main is pretty good. I've skipped most of it here because you don't want spoilers and story spoilers. But the voice acting is pretty good across the board, even with the incidental characters. And here we go, I've got myself a nice A ranking there. So I'm going to talk now more about the stuff you do outside of combat. So when you're not in combat, there is plenty to be doing. Or when you're not doing the story combat missions anyway, you can replay any of the story missions at any point. So if you want to improve on your ranking or just grind for some XP, you can do, which is brilliant. So those are all available to you. In addition to this game, which was available in the second game but not in the first, is squad stories. So if you use a member of your squad enough times, they will come up with their own story, which generally involves about 3 other team members. I think there are 19 of these altogether, and it's a little page with a single battle which will improve some of the potentials of those guys, so their relationships change, and also some of the negative things that can happen to them on the battlefield will be replaced with positive things. Skirmishes. Once you've completed certain battles, they become available to play as a skirmish. So again, you can go in and play battles to grind for experience or for money, or to perhaps try out some new weapons to see how they work, or try out some new team members. But then you've also got the headquarters. Now I'm going to be very careful about what I show you here. I've edited it out because I'm in a point of the story where there are slight spoilers. So you're not going to see any spoilers here. I've had to edit this very carefully. When you get experience points, you experience up a class at a time. So you'll like in this case, you will level up Grenadier, level up Sniper, etc. So you're not faffing about with the entirety individuals leveling up. I've now leveled up every single Grenadier. So that does make things a little bit simpler. And those are these 6 classes, or the infantry classes. You can also spend money to upgrade all of the weapons, and the upgrades are considerable. This is a big game. I'm 40 hours into it right now, and I think I'm only 2/3 of the way through the story, if that. And you can upgrade every element and every weapon, and there are different skill tiers. You can also upgrade your tanks. So your tanks are upgraded. You can upgrade their armor, upgrade their the protection on them. You can upgrade their weapons, as well as upgrading or creating certain things that give boosts and bonuses, as you'll see in just a second. This are the bits this is a kind of like a little mini game where each of these different things will enhance the tank in some way, but you've got to find space for them once you've developed them. So all of the armor can be upgraded as well. And later on in the game, which I'm not going to show you now, there is yet another thing to upgrade. There is a huge amount to upgrade. These stickers will add certain bonuses and benefits to the tank. This one gives me an 8+ boost in accuracy, for instance. So there's huge customization options in your armor. Also in terms of how you do your weapons as well. You've got, as you'd expect from an RPG, lots and lots of lore and backstories, and what will happen is the more I use Eileen, and particularly if I get one of her squad stories, the more I learn about her. So we have a look, for instance, at Laurent. I've got an extra paragraph there because I've used him enough to find out more about him. And if I ever get his squad story, then I'll learn even more about him, which is a nice way of getting you a bit more invested in characters, which, you know, in other games would be entirely disposable. If they die and you don't get them back, you feel bad about it, because these are people who have personality and character, which I'll kind of talk about right at the end. Your squad setup allows you to swap in and out people. So the people on the left-hand side are ones that are not in the squad at the moment. People on the right-hand side are the ones that I can call on in battle. And you want to regularly swap people in and out because it unlocks the ability for them to be commanders, which we'll talk about in a second, but also might give them access, or give you access to their squad stories, which means you get more information about them, upgrade their potentials, which are these blue things at the top, those ones that trigger in battle, as well as learning a little bit more about the characters themselves. And they are beautifully voice acted. You know, they are very, very individual and interesting characters. They are worth learning a little bit more about. So these are the potentials. That unreliable brother, that's a -1, as is distracted. The other 2 are positive. So they will trigger under certain circumstances, and you want to manage them. There's one character who's permanently drunk and has 4 negative potentials. This is equipment. So again, you can equip each of the characters individually, and the addition from the original game is that you can now equip accessories, which I'm going to show you now. If you go down to here, I've now got in that space at the bottom accessories that will unlock at certain parts of the game, which will give us certain buffs. I don't have any free for Teresa at the moment, but you can see that they will increase accuracy, protection, more HP, etc. That is an addition to the original game. They don't make a huge amount of difference, but it's nice to have that kind of little buff here and there that you can do to individualize your characters. And then at a certain point in the game, once you're much further into the game, you are able to take your general guys, your grunts rather than your story people, the 4 at the top in the box, and make them commanders, which gives you an extra action in battle if they are deployed, but also if they get killed in battle, they can come back. They don't disappear forever. Commanders will be revived the next game and can come back in again. So it's one way of protecting some of your best people, and they can only be turned into commanders if they have a corporal class like Zyger there's got at the very least. So you can see Millennia is private first class. I use her a few more times, she'll become corporal. Rebecca's corporal because I've done her squad story, for instance. So all of these people are ones I can make commanders. It gives me one extra move in battle and will protect that particular unit if they should unfortunately die. So what I want to talk about in the final parts of this particular part of the session is the most important thing for me in any game like this, and that's the story. So we're going to talk story next. The story in the original Valkyria Chronicles was quite incredible, I thought. The characters in that, as they are in this, are not soldiers. They're not career soldiers, they're militia. They are people protecting their homes, who volunteered to protect their homes from an invading force. Therefore, rather than being kind of crew-cut, foul-talking Marines like you get in a lot of these games, they are people who have other lives. You know, in the original Valkyria Chronicles, Welkin, who was the leader, was a teacher. Then you had Alicia, who was a baker. Rosie, who was a singer. You had Largo, who was a farmer. Now, these are people who are suddenly far more relatable because they were people like us. And that is exactly the same in this game. These are not necessarily career soldiers. They're a little bit more military than the first game, but the main characters are a group of friends from the same town who've known each other all their lives. As a result, there is a relatability to the characters to this game, just as there was in the first game. The original game dealt with racism, dealt with ethnic cleansing, dealt with the cost of war. And although this game doesn't go quite as deep as far as that is concerned, certainly it doesn't portray war to be anything glorious or something to be valued or considered to be, to be enjoyed. It is dark. People die. There are failures in this as well as victories. And you feel it on a very personal level because the characters feel it on a very personal level. So the story so far, I haven't finished it as yet, is very powerful. Not quite as gripping as the original game, but you do feel connected to the characters, which is absolutely critical for a game like this. Particularly even the little incidental characters. You know, the characters that can die, that other games might treat as cannon fodder, you get invested in because you do their squad stories. They have a narration and a personality on the battlefield. You know, they make comments about their surroundings. They talk to each other, and you get this sense of a person rather than just a grunt to be put into the line of fire. So if one does get downed, you are desperate to save them. Desperate to save them because if you don't save them, they're gone, they're dead. And there's even a memorial you can go to that's, shows you all the people who died. So there is a consequence for your actions. So you do feel connected to it. The story is great. Not as groundbreaking, I think, as the original, but it is very, very good and very compelling. The voice acting pretty much is very good. It's a bit quirky in Japanese, which we'll come to in a second, but it is very, very strong. And critically, you care about the people whose lives you are putting on the line every time you go into battle. There is a sense that you need to protect them. There is a sense that you shouldn't just run headlong into danger. You should have a cautious, tactical, intelligent approach. Otherwise, your team will suffer as a result. So you've got that level of investment, which they've still managed to get in this game that they had in the original game. What this game doesn't do as well is it's not as cheesy. To be honest, the original Valkyria Chronicles had some very Japanesey quirkiness to it. Now, in some cases, it grated, but in most cases, it was charming. Now, the characters had a little bit more personality to them. Largo, for instance, who was one of the main characters, had an obsession with vegetables. So one of his potentials saw him screaming at the top of his lungs, vegetables, going, vegetables! And it gave him a buff in defense and attack because he loved vegetables so much. There was a girl who every time she ran through long grass would go, happy grass. And because she liked being in grass, she got a buff in evasion so she didn't get shot so easily. My favourite character in the original Valkyria Chronicles was Jan, who was a lancer who loved Largo. He was gay, he had a buff when he was around other men, he was near Largo, he got a buff, and he was a charming, just lovely, interesting characters. This game lacks that a little bit. All of the characters have personality, certainly, and all of them are very individual, but that fun, insane quirkiness is missing a little bit from this game. Not too much, and certainly not in a way it's going to break it for me by any means, but it would have been nice to have a little bit of that ridiculous quirkiness that the original had. That is a very, very minor comment, to be perfectly honest with you, because otherwise the characters are strong, the voice acting is strong, the story beats hit home with impact because you care about the people who are involved in it. It is a strong contender. I love Valkyria Chronicles 4, as you probably already guessed. Do I love it as much as the original? Is it going to be in my top 10 games of all time? Is it going to be higher placed anyway than the original? Fact of the matter is, no, it isn't. I don't love it yet. Say I'm 40 hours in, I haven't finished it yet, but I don't love it yet as much as the original. But certainly this is a superb game. If you enjoyed the original, you will love this. If you enjoy strategy role-playing games, you will definitely enjoy this. If you like games that have challenge and story that require thought, preparation, intelligence and planning, this is definitely a game for you. If you like charging headlong into battle, all guns blazing, this is not the game for you. You will die repeatedly and get very frustrated. But as a whole, this game is, from a mechanical perspective, so in terms of how the game works and the game plays, it is an advance on the original. Absolutely. There is greater tactical depth. It's been criticised for not being different enough, but I would argue against that in terms of, like I said earlier, the way you're now using the environment more to your advantage, and how you're having to split your team up more to take tactical advantage over a battlefield. I think it is an evolution, not a revolution, but there is enough new about it to make it a better game from a gameplay perspective. The bit where it doesn't connect as well for me, in perspective of the original game, is the fact that the story, although good, is not quite as compelling as the original. The characters, although very relatable and very interesting, are not as relatable and interesting as in the original game. And it just weirdly is now lacking. It's a bit too Western. I would love for it to have maintained a little bit of its Japanese quirkiness. That would have made it absolutely essential for me. As it stands, it is a superb game, one that I will play long beyond the point when I finish the story. There is plenty of after game content apparently, and I will be absolutely doing all of that. So brilliant game. Absolutely worth your while if this genre is of all of interest to you. And I can't wait to stop talking to you now, switch the PlayStation back on and get back into the action. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, give it a like. If you think someone else will like it, give it a share. And if you'd like to subscribe to my channel for more content like this, there will be the subscription button floating around, probably at the top right hand side of this screen right now. Give it a click for more content from PlayStation for Fun. So thank you very much for watching and have a fabulous week. Bye bye for now.